What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Apartment 113 podcast, where we talk with cool folks in the cannabis and psychedelics industry to learn about their projects and celebrate their successes. My name is Rob Sanchez, and this is episode 17. We're joined today by Mehka King. Mehka is the founder and podcast host of Cash Color Cannabis. He's recently launched a quarterly magazine for Cash Color Cannabis as well, with some exciting plans around the corner. Mehka was inspiring to talk with, as Apartment 113 has only just begun its podcasting journey, and Cash Color Cannabis is well down that road. With over 300 episodes, you can check it out on cashcolorcannabis.com and look for a potential collaboration in the works, perhaps. Enjoy the show. Mehka, thank you very much for coming on the show, dude. It's good to talk.
No problem. Thank you for having me on, man. It's been great, especially since we had a chance to be face to face recently while we was in Miami.
Yeah, dude, got to take advantage of those moments when you can. I feel like so much of the cannabis industry is networked remotely that it can be kind of rare to get everybody in the same room.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a great conference down there in stormy Benzinga. I think
I was not expecting that, but again, I should have expected it in Florida. But yeah, it was pouring rain.
Yes, and I think it was it was a different style of conference than what I've attended in the past. I've been to BizCon and some of the like cannabis industry B2B conferences, but you could definitely tell this is where the decision makers and kind of some of the capital was at in this one.
Yeah. Oh, you could definitely tell the money was in the room.
Yeah.
You could definitely tell that.
Yeah, it seems like the right place to be if your projects are in that phase where you're looking to build teams or looking to find investments and kind of fully enter the cannabis industry, right?
Yes, it was a perfect place for that. So, but again, I'm glad I got a chance to meet you face to face. We had a good chance to have a conversation to get to warm us up to what we're doing today.
Yes, definitely, dude. And I walked up on seeing your magazine in the booths there, in the little vendor bins with Cannabis Tech and Cash Color Cannabis right on the left. That was definitely cool to see after seeing you kind of teasing the magazine for so long and kind of building up that story to see the drop, man. That was like the entering the ring, huh?
It really was. It was such a surreal moment for myself too. Just trying to get them down there. I was actually supposed to have even more copies, and then my printer actually had a hold up issue, so I could only get 250 out. I was rushing. I hope it got mailed to the right place. So I was actually that was probably the most nervous I've ever been going to a conference because I never had to fulfill anything other than myself. But when I finally got there and walked in and saw that, and I actually went crazy. Like I was like, oh snap, this is real now.
Yeah, dude, seeing it on the wall. It's one thing to dream it and another thing for sure to see it happening.
Absolutely.
And let's talk about the magazine first, and then dive into the podcast. You had been running Cash Color Cannabis for a few years now. Yeah. Heavy kudos there on stretching towards your 300th episode around the corner, man. That is quite a journey for a podcast.
Really is 7 years, man. We've been doing the podcast now for 7 years.
7, okay.
Yeah, actually, if I would have stayed on the route that we were doing, because we used to do 2 episodes a night whenever we would do the live shows, and I would do an episode during the week of somebody who was remote, we'd probably be way closer to like 400 episodes. But I took a break after we hit our 100th episode and realized I can't be doing that kind of grind every week.
You got to kind of set a little bit better regimen around it, huh?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're working, man, running and interviewing.
Yeah, all day, man. But the magazine has been a huge help, and the magazine is now probably the thing that is so important to me when it comes to Cash Color Cannabis brand overall. And I've had the idea, actually, the idea to start my own magazine has been in my heart for a while. Like, I'm a journalist, so, one of the things I've always wanted to do was have my own magazine one day. It just never really became a thing for me in the cannabis space because the podcast was so popular, and I had so much fun doing the podcast. But, I gave you a little inside information while we were in Miami. It was literally an opportunity I have. And I won't mention the brand on air, but there was an opportunity I had to actually work for another magazine, another media outlet in the cannabis space. And this came to me last year. They actually approached me with the opportunity of coming on full time and helping out with everything that was underneath them because they were similar to me. They had a magazine, they had a podcast, website, events, things like that. Not to give it away, but they came to me and asked me if I wanted to work for them. And I thought it was actually a cool idea. They had a nice little compensation package. I was all in. So we did about 3 weeks back to back of interviews where I had to interview with the recruiter, I had to interview with the vice president of the company. Then I had a big interview with everybody in the editorial room.
Oh,
And
wow.
from what I can gather, every single thing went well. Like everybody loved me, everybody was ready to work. I was getting more questions like, so what are we going to do once day one hits? Rather than anything else. I was really preparing myself to have to really transition over into corporate cannabis, like I guess I would have had to call it.
Yeah,
But
yeah. So the
I told
questions
you,
were sort of as if you already got the role or starting
yeah, it was
to
almost like
pass that.
I already had the job. I was already trying to figure out how I was going to tell everything else around my life, from my other jobs to everything else, how I'm going to have to do this. But as time went on, it took another about 3 weeks after we did our interviews, where I was hoping to try to have this news done before it was like the second week of September, because me and my wife were going to Jamaica, and I kind of wanted to have everything in place before we took this vacation, because I'd hate to have to scramble while on vacation. But I didn't get the news yet. I was still kind of nervous. And I remember sitting on the beach. We were in Jamaica. I was in we were in Montego Bay, and I was sitting on the beach, and I was sitting there thinking to myself, I'm so nervous. I'm really waiting for them to tell me, it's go time, so I could get ready to start pitching these stories. And I thought to myself, the levels of research you had to do to show who you were as far as a journalist, to show that you had the ability to work with these people, that you have the ability to multitask, that you have the ability to produce a podcast and produce stories for magazines. All those things kind of piled up on me. Like I was really sitting on the beach thinking to myself, if you just did that for a group of people, why wouldn't you do that for yourself? Like it couldn't be that much harder to start your own magazine. And when
Yeah,
I say
man.
the very next day, again, we're still in Jamaica. The very next day, I get an email saying we decided to go into a different direction. Like we'd love to still work with you, but we're just not going to do that. So I said, okay, maybe that was the sign to go
Right.
ahead and start my own thing. So that started off. The idea for the magazine started off in September. So I set a goal to make it quarterly, and I planned out my first one that dropped on the end of January this year, and I spent the rest of the 2022 planning what 2023 was going to look like, which was going to be us introducing the magazine to Cash Color Cannabis family, and we did that starting in January. I was excited when we dropped the first one, because you talk about nerves. I've never actually put myself in a position of being a publisher of a magazine. I never put myself in a position of being responsible for my own stories in this capacity, or even having to do a layout and bring it all home. So this was all
Right.
very new and all very, very nerve wracking for me. But
So there was still some anxiety around it, even
oh
with
yeah,
200 plus podcast episodes.
very
It's
much.
just a different medium or slightly more focus on the words, on those specific words, and
It's
on the content.
it's exactly how you actually said it. It's a different medium. People are used to, I guess, consuming stuff differently now. Like most people consume listening or watching. But I came up and I still do. I love magazines. I think it's very important to have something that you read. So yeah, it was a different animal to put together. And then also you have to you're trying to make sure that the audience that you've cultivated for the last 7 years, who are now listening and watching, are now about to become readers. And luckily for me, they were. Like I can tell you right now, on our first day, the first day that we went live with the magazine, I told people what the price point was and all that. It was $10. It's $10 an issue. And I looked up, by the end of the day, we had so many orders. I was shocked, and I had to go fulfill them all. But we had so
Right.
many orders, I was blown away. So I
Create a
actually
new
have more.
problem for you.
Yeah, I am more pressure now. The pressure on me is fulfilling all these orders and continuing to drop these on a timely manner. So actually, gearing up for the second issue was even more nerve wracking than anything.
Because I think we talked about that before too. It's kind of like that treadmill of content production. You set the
Hmm.
pace for yourself, and then before you realize it, you're still walking, and you got to
Yeah.
keep planning the future while dropping previous episodes.
Exactly. Yeah, it became a different kind of grind. So, I spent, a matter of fact, been spending the last 4 or 5 weeks trying to make sure I have a good content calendar together for the podcast, for the magazine. Make sure that I'm not running myself ragged, that I'm not pushing myself to so many deadlines anymore. Like the
Yeah, you're
first
wearing
2 or
all the
3
hats, man.
yeah. You are editor in chief. You are the main writer. Like you're providing every story that's coming down the pipeline, so I can afford to have a staff. So you're putting yourself in a position where every moment of your day, every minute means something. So you have to make sure that you're making the best of it.
Dude, and much easier said than done. You sound like a serial entrepreneur in how you tackle these projects, man. How do you handle the kind of like work-life balance, or how do you handle your work day with so many avenues or so many things to be working on at the same time?
Oh man, honestly, I gotta credit my wife for that. She also is a serial entrepreneur, but she works a full time job. And one thing I watched her do over the last 3 years, since she's been working for the job that she's working on, is how she's had to change her time. And I watch her now with these different time management apps that she uses, how the different calendars she has. We actually have a calendar right behind me that she has on the wall dedicated just for us eating. You know what I mean? Like you have to really
Yeah.
schedule your whole entire life. And I started to really take a cue from her how to schedule out things so you're not burning yourself out. As I just mentioned, I really started getting a grasp of that over the last 5, 6 weeks of how you can't run yourself ragged because you are doing a lot of things. Like I still have to do the show every Tuesday. I still have to make sure that this magazine is done by a certain amount of time so I can have it printed out and ready to go. We now have subscribers. I have people
Yeah,
who are
yeah.
waiting on me to do something. So
So
yeah,
doing the
that's
show with the
cool.
same level of energy,
Exactly.
bringing that same vibe while you're working up a whole new project with the magazine is definitely a noble challenge, man. I like that multi-project pursuit and yeah, scheduling the world, man. I think I read this book called Indistractable,
Mm.
and it talked about how you can't really be distracted unless you know what you should be tracted, like what are you tracted to, like what are you supposed to do,
Yeah.
and you're not distracted unless you know what you were supposed to be doing that day. So the whole theory in that book is really time box your day, like put everything in there. Like if you're going to relax, if you're spending time with your family, prepping
Exactly.
dinner, make sure you get things that are important to you blocked out so that you spend that time.
Every day at 12:30, I got it written in my plan to take a nap.
Yeah, dude, got to get the essentials done, man.
Yeah, man.
So from the origin of that light bulb moment there on the beautiful beach in Jamaica, and getting the magazine going, you said that you spent a little bit of 2022 like prepping and laying the groundwork.
Yes.
Was there a lot of research and learning there, or was it more content generation?
Oh, it was a lot of research because the content part isn't hard. Like I hate to be that person, but if you're a writer, you're a creator, it's not. That's not the hardest part. The hardest part was finding out who would be a reputable printer, who's somebody who I could trust to lay out this magazine. I'm blessed to be able to have a circle of friends who are all writers. Like who of them, some of them are editors in positions at other publications. Which one of these people would have time to be my editor? You know what I mean? And if not, I got to find somebody who I can trust to really edit my words. Those are the real issues right there. On top of trying to make sure when it comes to shipping out that you're weighing everything out correctly. You're getting the right postage. Little things like that became the big thing to the point where it definitely outweighs the writing part because the writing part I could do it. I literally can. I could do these stories in a day as long as I have all my material together.
As
But
long
the
as you have
other
a time to
thing,
relax and dig into the words, huh?
no, the other
Yeah.
things, that's the thing that piles onto you. Because I tell you right now, even just finding somebody to do the layout, that was a 3 week process in itself. And even now that I found somebody who has found consistently to do it for the last 2 issues, I'm still looking around for somebody else. Like maybe there's somebody else who could be a tad bit better, maybe a better price point, something like that. So I
Right.
became that guy. You're looking at price points now, and who could turn things around at a normal, who could turn things around in an ETA that I need. That became the more pressure for me, way more than drilling out the content.
Yeah, setting those deadlines and trying to
Hmm.
trying to get the logistics of the business going.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's funny and maybe unfortunate how fast a vision can go from being fun. This is the vision. Let's
yeah,
like invent and plan and think to being like, oh man, the rubber needs to hit the road. I got to fill out this paperwork. I've got to set up this account. There's
yeah.
always some red tape behind every dream, man. But it's good to cut through it, dude. It sounds like you guys are making great progress and making good pace for quarter three's issue.
Yes,
Does
we
that have a
are.
release date yet?
We actually, it's going to be the oh man, let me pull up my calendar because it's going to be the first week of the third quarter. Actually, that Friday we're dropping it.
Oh, okay.
And
Right.
I don't want to give away too much, but we actually have some amazing stories for this one, and I'm very, 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 very excited to roll this out. This will be the first one where we're actually gonna shoot the cover tonight, and I'm still gonna get somebody to animate it, but I'm gonna actually shoot the cover tonight. So that's the first time we're actually shooting our own cover. And it's
Sweet.
also the first time that we're rolling out advertisers who are not Atlantabis Clothing or Cash Color Cannabis. So we actually have advertisers this round. So I'm very much ready to knock out this episode, this issue. I'm actually so far ahead of it. I actually thought to myself today, don't hit cruise control just yet, just because you feel like you're this far ahead. Like still, be aware
Keep
that all kind of bumps can come up in this road.
keeping some tabs on it. Yeah,
Yeah.
expanding the advertising is awesome too. That's a big step there. And
Yeah.
is the Atlantabis clothing brand part of Cash Color Cannabis or partnered with?
It's partnered. Like it's still something I do. It's something that actually came up to me one day. This is about oh geez, now it's about 4 years ago when I was doing the show. And we have a live show here that we do in Atlanta at Live Hip Hop Daily Studios, and I'll invite people out to come out to come watch the show, come have a safe place that they want to sesh and just kind of enjoy themselves. So
Oh, cool. Just to
whenever
chill
people,
and
yeah, whenever people come out, it would just be always a dope scene. And I used to laugh and say that this is almost like a private community within Atlanta called Atlantabis. Like we're our own secret neighborhood. And I started using the name enough to a point where I said, I should throw that on a T-shirt. And when we started doing it, people loved them. You know what I mean? So I said, all right, well, this might be a good end. Not even a good revenue generator. It's definitely a great one, but it's also something to keep the creativity going. So we dropped our Atlantabis signature collection. We also have our drug lord collection. If you've ever been on our website, where we reimagine what a drug lord is. So we have images of Ronald Reagan, George Bush, and Oliver North, and we have them as drug lords. We often get a mix of thinking of people like Big Meech and thinking of people like Freeway Ricky Ross and so many other people as being drug lords because of everything they were tasked with doing and all
right.
the money they amassed. And it's true, they definitely were. But when you think about it, if y'all were multimillionaires, then who are the people who actually brought it in? How much did they make? And then you start thinking to yourself, we got to move up levels here. So yeah, Ronald Reagan would be a drug lord to me.
Yeah, that Ronald Reagan logo you guys have, he's giving the thumbs up, dude. That's pretty great, man.
People love that.
Definitely like the angle there. It's very cool to see that how the clothing brand kind of evolved from the podcast. If we
Yeah.
step way back now, 7 years ago, when was that Jamaica moment or that light bulb for the podcast? Or when were you like dead set on, starting up Cash Color Cannabis? Was there a particular experience
Oh
or
yes.
some individuals that really motivated you on that front?
Yes, it was actually. It was actually, well, yeah, going all the way back. The concept of Cash Color Cannabis came because I was trying to work on a documentary called The Color Green Cash Color Cannabis, which would be about the lack of black faces, black and brown faces in the cannabis community. This was in 2016 we came up with this idea.
Wow.
And the more I
Yeah.
think about it, it's such a great idea, but it goes back to time management and so many other things that I wasn't fully preparing my mind for when it comes to doing a documentary. But we did a lot of filming. We went around the country. Matter of fact, me and my cameraman, we went to Denver, New York. We covered a lot of things.
Oh,
And
cool.
by the
Yeah.
time it got to the point where I really was ready to get it edited, which what I thought was edited, you start looking at the footage, you realize you don't have anywhere close to enough to make a documentary. But I was also in the mix of taking interviews now because people were interested in talking about this. So I'm doing all these interviews about the documentary, even though what I knew in my mind, I didn't know if I had enough to even finish it. But one day I'm doing an interview, and I'm doing an interview with a good friend. As a matter of fact, he's a good friend of mine now, my man Justin Good. He had a podcast called Good Hennessy that was going on at at the studio I now currently record at Live Hip Hop Daily. And Good asked me, he said, "Hey, can you mind coming down on the show? I see you doing a documentary, and come talk to us on the podcast I got." And I remember saying to myself, I remember asking him, I said, "So what is a podcast?" And he said, he explains to me what a podcast. This is literally 2016. He explains to me what a podcast is, and I say, "Well, why don't y'all call it an online radio show? Like that's what we used to call it back then. Like, why don't you do that?" And he said, "Well, I don't know, man. We just call it podcast." So I
Just
came
come
on.
down.
Yeah, I just came down to his show and we talked, and it was a great conversation. But the thing that really smacked me was not only was this a good conversation, but the venue itself, Live Hip Hop Daily. Like, I wish you could come to Atlanta so you could see it. the studio itself, the minute you walk in, you can feel the creativity. You can feel the you could feel something going on.
Good vibes across the
Yeah,
board, huh?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And when I got done with the interview, I remember asking the owner of Live Hip Hop Daily, who's my show producer now. His name is Herb. I said, Herb, I would love to be able to have a podcast where I talk about what I'm doing now with the documentary. I said, I think it's something that could possibly help us get more ideas for the documentary, drum up money, things like that. So he said, cool. He said, the only day we have available is Tuesday at 9 o'clock. If you can make that work, you got it. So that started in December 16th, 2016. We started our first episode of Cash Color Cannabis, and we've been rolling ever since. And we've had everybody such as Freeway Ricky Ross. He's been on the show. Kwanzaa Hall, who is actually, Kwanzaa, what is your role now? At one point, he was a House representative. I don't know where Kwanzaa is right now, but Kwanzaa's still definitely a politician still. Kwanzaa was on the show. We've had amazing people come through and be guests. Shout out to the Weed Bar. I see the Weed Bar doing big things in Detroit. They were our 100th episode guests. But yeah, we've had amazing people come through and help us elevate this conversation that we love having and help us really put a voice behind cannabis that maybe you would have never necessarily seen, or never necessarily heard of.
Totally,
So
man. Yeah,
that was
especially
my
then.
that was my Jamaica moment, going down there and doing a good Hennessy podcast and asking a million questions such as what is a podcast and why would this even be relevant to the world?
Right, man. We're gonna have to dub that as a real thing, man. Jamaica moments. When you come to those realizations, suddenly all the things fall in place.
You're sitting in Jamaica with a drink in your hand and a joint in the other, you're saying to yourself, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. Hey, sometimes you just need to relax for those ideas to kind of
Exactly.
present themselves too. That's a interesting thing with creativity. When you try to set everything aside, suddenly there's this idea screaming at you. Oh, didn't see that before with all the chaos and everything else.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
So kind of one thing after the next, then it started as really your interviews for the documentary and then just continued to evolve, man. You've got a wonderful guest list, like scrolling through the past history of Cash Color Cannabis is amazing to see the voices that you've brought, onto the stage and, the projects that you've shined a light on. I think that's definitely a wonderful effort for the, Black, brown communities, for maybe underrepresented communities in cannabis, as it's something that it's pretty seriously impacted the industry from its early days.
Yes.
As the big MSOs and corporations, people getting involved, they didn't turn too heavily back into the communities that were underground, man, for lack of better words, that were part of the scene, or perhaps being impacted by the laws. There's a lot of awareness, I think, that could be brought there, and bringing and building that stage, man. You can see just how much of the community is involved and how important it is to people. I think that it's been really empowering to listen to some of the stories on the episodes and kind of hear the journeys from all the folks you brought on.
Thank you. You're right, though. It's very important, and I realize this too, and it becomes another, I don't want to say burden, but it becomes definitely something that I hold every day. This is an important conversation for people. And you start realizing how we don't necessarily have these kind of conversations within our communities, or we're not allowed to have these kind of conversations in our communities. When I first started the podcast, one of the things that people would ask me a lot was, "Are you scared to do this?" And I would be like, "What do you mean? Are you scared to do this?" Like, they're like, "Yo, are you scared to be having these kind of conversations? Are you nervous that the police going to come knock you down and come arrest you?" And I remember my first rebuttal would be High Times. I was like, High Times has been around longer than I've been on Earth, and I don't know if they've ever been worried about somebody breaking in doors because of what they're doing with freedom of speech. I'm not selling weed.
Right, on the media front and on the freedom of speech side, it's the door's open already. But it's
the door's been open. The door's been open. So I realized then again, it's a very important conversation because we're used to having these conversations on our porches or in our living rooms, not necessarily in a studio setting out loud with cameras blaring. So it's dope to be able to bring that forth for people. And also now, like I say, it's kind of something that's on my head every single day when I sit down to now do the magazine or I sit down to do the podcast, that you have to remember that this is for people who don't get a chance to necessarily tell their story or ever hear their story. So make sure you're putting 100% into it. This is bigger than just you smoking a joint on air. This is people who don't have a chance to ever hear these kind of conversations. So
sharing something they're passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah, and I think I mean, on the diversity side for the cannabis industry, there's still so much that can be done for like social equity licenses and for making it easier to get involved. You know, some states, I live in Nevada right now, and it is not easy to get licensed. You're going to need a significant investment. So seeing how other states are doing like micro business lotteries and social equity programs are pretty great. I mean, on that front, I'm half El Salvadoran. That's where my dad is from, and I have not met another Salvadoran in the cannabis industry. So
Like,
it's kind of wild to have that experience and not know like other leaders or other people working in the industry that are even from the same country. So I mean, I've just found solace in the podcast to hear unique voices and like the diverse perspectives there. I think it's excellent, man.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I do it for that reason. Like, again, this is 7 years now, and I know me as a creative, I would have got tired of doing this after year two if I didn't understand the importance of why we need to have these conversations. So I
Oh,
do understand.
right. So some of that passion like helped to fuel your progress or keep you motivated there throughout the years.
Oh yeah, yes. Again, it's not it's my passion to keep these conversations going, and also understanding that these conversations honestly need to be had. You know, I really had that. I really had that. I guess it was another Jamaica moment in Miami when people are walking up to me with the magazine and saying, yo, so this is real now. And I was like, yeah. And flipping through the pages, seeing Chanel Lindsay grab the copy and go to her page, like stuff like that is like, yeah, okay. So people get it. Like this is you need to continue to bring this level of quality and this level of dopeness to more people. They get it, yo, and remember that this is what they want to keep seeing. They want to see themselves in print and media telling a story. Like I felt like for the longest, especially being in this space for as long as I have covering it, that I feel like we on repeat keep talking to the same people. Like it's almost like you're not even allowing other conversations to come in. We're always talking about who was the first this, who was the first that. And I'm like, there's been second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth since this time. Like we can keep this conversation going without having to pin down the same five people.
Right, right. And those sixth, seventh people, man, they're learning from
Yes.
all of the mistakes that the first seven made, and oftentimes they're doing something, on a different level, or they've changed their approach. I think that is a little bit prevalent with, and nothing against Wana Brands, but we see the CEO of Wana Brands on many interviews, on constant reports. When I was at Akerna, the Akerna CEO was constantly brought into those things as well. That it's important to hear their perspectives. Obviously, they're major leaders and they're working their asses off for the cannabis industry. You can't argue with that. But the fact that there are so many other folks working to the same caliber that don't get the stage, I think, is important. I started as a cannabis cultivator in Denver, creating hash and working in the garden, and then fell back on my college work, which was with software and IT. So for a little while, I was actually out of the cannabis industry, building software for just random things. But since then, I've been doing cannabis software since about 2017. And it does feel sometimes that ancillary services and folks who are helping the cannabis industry but aren't actually cultivating can be forgotten about in the grand scheme of things, because there's just more allure. It's sexier to own the business and grow the cannabis than it is to provide good compliant inventory management or to make soil or pots and things like that. But there really are folks of every industry that are kind of moving and shaking to keep cannabis going.
Exactly, especially in cannabis. Like all those things that you just mentioned and more, those are the things that keep everything going. It's not just simply, I have a dispensary, let's talk about this person all day. Like, let's talk about from the packaging, the marketing, the who's doing the real estate. Like, there should be people that you should be able to speak to on so many different levels. So, again, it goes back to I'm glad I'm able to give a platform to show that there's more than five people here. Like, there's
Yeah.
definitely more. There's definitely room to have conversations. There's definitely room to have these to spotlight other people. No, and this is no knock on the five people, but there's definitely room to have these conversations.
Yes. Yeah. That's where all these online radio shows come in, man.
Yeah.
How's the Georgia cannabis industry? They're medical. There's a few medical dispensaries in the state, or is it
Yeah. This
still very early in
and this
the?
literally happened. Was it? I believe now, maybe about 2 weeks ago, we just got our first actual actual physical brick and mortar shops. Like this just happened. But when I
Oh,
say that
okay.
this has been ongoing for 7 years, like this almost has been going on as long as I've been doing the podcast. How to actually roll out this program, and they did. There was a little bit of blame to COVID as to why they didn't have their licenses and everything ready at that second. But
Kind of
I believe,
slowed down.
yeah,
Yeah.
there was a slowdown, and then there was also uproar over who got the licenses. True Leaf is one of the stores down here, and they're not the most
Oh,
popular brand right now currently, and I feel
yeah,
like they
yeah.
do a pretty good job of ducking that conversation, but they're not the most popular brand right now. But they have a store, they have a license, they have a store here,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
they were one of the first stores that people were lining up to, and I remember seeing the pictures. Like, I don't know. I hope this doesn't go left on everybody. They're the very first store. I hope this doesn't go left, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Kind of steering everyone astray.
yeah, our program's been slow rolled out. It's strictly medical, and it's low THC oil, so it's no flour, no anything like that. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay. Okay.
we're still slow rolling that point currently.
Yeah.
So we haven't even got to the flour conversation just yet. So most of the
Right.
patients who do have access, who do have cards, they're more happy they now have access to get something in the state. Prior to this, if you had a Georgia medical card,
You
it
had to
was
get
almost like having
creative.
monopoly money. Like what do I do with this?
Oh, so it was like, hey, we'll give you this, but there's nowhere to
Nowhere at
use it.
all. Can't do this
Uh,
at all. You can't even. I'm not even sure if you can use this in another state, but you have one.
yeah, that's definitely a consolation prize there. I think we'd probably expect the Georgia to roll things slowly. I grew up in Kansas, and Kansas hasn't even started rolling anything. So some states are going to take their time. I feel it's probably necessary. Not all the population's ready for it, but every state has folks that do need that access, that they need the therapeutic benefits.
Yes.
And so that's really great to see that at least many states are starting the medical programs and helping people find that kind of that solace that they need. I've heard a lot of anecdotes from older folks that have tried cannabis that have like wonderful experience with like arthritis and pain and just things that they may have been managing pharmaceutically before that can be much more naturally handled. On the podcast front and kind of for Cash Color Cannabis in general, how do you maintain that constant flow of wonderful guests and projects? Do you have a pipeline of folks you're considering? Do you hit the ground and network yourself, or are they starting to come to you now?
No, I still hit the ground and network myself. Like I do have a good pipeline of people I would love to have on, but the one issue I do run into being in Atlanta, and it's a good issue. A lot of people like to visit Atlanta. They don't never visit Atlanta on a Tuesday. So some of the people I would love to have on the show, they'll be in the city, but it won't be till like Friday or Saturday, and they'll be leaving out on a Monday. So I often have to make sure that I know what's going on a local level, so we can make sure we can keep that kind of content going every single Tuesday. And we do have a blessing. We do have the chance to actually have some national names on. My friend Tucky Blunt, who's out of Oakland, Tucky flew down to come do the show. We've actually had a couple of people fly in to do the show. Shout out to my man Antoine Mordecan, who's with M for MM in Alabama. He has a license to grow. Man, look, I love everything that Antoine does, but Antoine came to the city to come do the podcast. We do have a great pipeline of folks, but it comes back to the networking. I have to keep my feet on the ground to know what's going on locally all the time in order just to keep the show going on a certain level.
Right, right, man. There's so much other work outside of just churning out consistent episodes. I
Yeah.
think that's something I'm just learning here now. Like 14 episodes into Apartment 113, we've got the pipeline going with a few folks we're planning, and I've had to start hitting LinkedIn, hitting my business cards, looking for potential guests and things like that. So it's a grind for sure. But I've really enjoyed having the conversation. I think the podcast form helps the mask of like society and work life kind of fall away. And I've noticed, talking with people that after 10, 20, 30 minutes, like really starts to feel more comfortable. And it seems like, oh, wow, you're really like opening up. I can understand more about you, or your initiatives, your passion in cannabis, where in the beginning, it always starts like, okay, the business, the company, kind of what we're doing. The podcast format really helps that mask fall and, build some deeper conversations.
Really does. It really does. It helps you go right. Like you mentioned, it helps you go past so I created this brand and this is what we do and this is why it's amazing. You get to kind of learn, you after a while, you get to learn who this person is and you get to learn a lot about the person behind the brand, which is way more important than just learning about your products.
Yeah, man. I actually discovered podcasts when I was cultivating and I was pulling like 14, 16-hour days in the grow just alone. You can only listen to like music so long before it starts getting kind of crazy. So the podcasts were like inviting people in to the grow basically and saying like, all right, like let's chill with these guys now. And since then, man, I've been on the podcast grind really hard as far as listening, man. I love to always have something playing. And lately I've been speeding them up though to play even more, which is these apps allow you to speed the podcast up to like 1.5 speed, 1.6.
Oh yeah, Spotify does that too, doesn't it? Don't they know how you speed it up?
That just blows me away how the human ear can still decipher that language at such a rapid pace.
We are adaptable. We're adaptable animals, man.
Yeah, I will say after listening to Cash Color Cannabis at a 1.5 speed, this sounds a little bit slower, so maybe we'll need to ramp it up. It's funny that you get used to it.
I'm gonna talk about that tonight. What speed do y'all listen to the podcast on? I'm just curious.
If you really want to get stoned, you could listen at 0.6. Slow it way down.
Really, it's almost like so your DJ screwing it. Like I definitely want to have this conversation. like, how many people are screwing and chopping our podcast?
Right. Hey, everyone's a DJ, man, in their pocket there. And on one of your last episodes, you mentioned that you were on a cannabis fast for a little while. How'd that process go for you, or kind of what were your goals with the fast?
The goal of the fast was, and on this, shout out to my man Mike with Cannabis Media Collective. It was his idea. So he came on prior to him coming on the show, he had came by the show, and he's an amazing consumer. I don't want to talk about. He does have his own plans occasionally, but man, he can smoke. He's been to the studio plenty of times, and one day he came to the studio and said, I'm about to do this fast. So I was like, what you talking about? He said, I'm gonna take a 30-day cleanse. He explained to us the importance of why we need to do this from time to time. Just take a little break to reset your body and everything. Right. So I told him, because matter of fact, right before that conversation, me and him were doing an episode of the podcast. And I said, that's what we're going to call the podcast. We're going to call it a 30-day run. And I'm going to join in with you. And he did his 30 days. And honestly, it took me 90 days to do 30 days. I'm not going to lie to you. Like Mike will tell you, I kept chronicling my 30 days. He would ask me one day, he goes, so how's it going? I say, I got to day at 19 and I'm just going to start all over again. He said, well, at least you try. And I said, bro, I'm going to try until I get this 30 days. And unfortunately for me, my 30th day came April 20th of last year. That was officially the 30th day, the last day. And I told myself, I'm going to give myself one more day. So on 420, I did nothing. And I was upset about it. There were so many events going on in the city. And I steered clear. I was almost like if you ever seen the SpongeBob meme where I'm sitting up and I'm looking down at all my friends having the best party of their life. And I'm saying to myself, I just got another couple hours.
I'll just be sober for a little while longer.
You have to be sober for a little while longer. But it did. I went on a fast and it was good. It definitely was something that I like showing myself that I can do things. Like, you know what I mean? Like every once in a while, I like to pull out the card that if I didn't want to smoke, I could. I've had this conversation with somebody and they be always laughing. But no, and I could prove it. I've done it. It took me 90 days. Yeah,
now it's like, hey, man, I really did kick it a little bit.
It took me 90 days, but I consistently put together 30 days, at least one of those months.
Right. I think the longest fast I've had was maybe in 2017 or so. I went almost 180 days.
Wow.
And I was really trying a bunch of different things. I was microdosing a little bit with psilocybin and just exploring some different projects. But since then I've found more of a home with moderation. And instead of abstaining completely, it's more trying to push off the consumption until try to get everything done, right? Or feel satisfied with the day and then relax. Because I love to smoke as much as the next guy. And if I start in the morning, I'll be chiefing all day and I still get things done, but maybe not as much, or maybe not to the same caliber.
That's something that I learned myself. That I learned what kind of consumer I am. That actually I'm somebody who is a microdoser when it comes to weed. Like I don't need to face a whole blunt. I don't need to put an eighth in the backwood. Like I could really hit this a couple times in the morning, put it out, and literally come back home and then finish. I've realized
I
that
see.
part about
Yeah.
it.
Right. No need to burn that down to
No.
the roach. Just take a few puffs and be good to go, or have a little dab. Do you have a consumption preference on your side?
I do. I'm more of a paper and tobacco person. I'm trying to get into using a bong a little bit more. Like I'm trying to think of little cleaner ways to consume
I
because I
see.
am trying to
Yeah.
steer away from tobacco totally. So I've been trying to look at little cleaner ways to do it. So thank you all the paper brands who have been supplying my paper needs. I appreciate y'all.
Keeping
And
you
I do have
going.
a dope
Yeah.
bong here. I have a Keith Haring bong that I've never used, and I'm planning on breaking that out shortly and see how this whole bong life works.
Dude, nice, man. Does it have the ice catchers on it?
Yes, it do. Yes,
Hey,
it do.
there you go.
And,
Drop that temperature down. That's awesome.
and I love the fact that it's Keith Haring. Like the main reason I
Yeah.
haven't touched it is because it's from his Keith Haring Foundation. It has artwork on it. It's 100% legit, like some work that came from his family. And I'm like, I
Wow.
don't even want to touch this. It was given to me as a gift, and I was like, I don't even want to touch this. But if
Taking
I
like
hit a
one
bong, it's
hit
gonna
and
be
hit that
this.
isopropyl.
Yeah.
Just clean it up constantly, man. I'll never forget. I had a very nice Roar bong. That brand is like ROOR. They make some really thick glass, like classic beaker tubes, kind of like the Keith Herrings. I had ice catchers in it, and I'm sitting there putting the ice in the top. And, sometimes it doesn't quite fit, and so you got to give it a little
Look,
just a little love tap.
you gotta manipulate it.
So I was in the process there, and I was just talking to someone else and just kind of hit the ice, and I heard it before I saw it, man, a crack. And it didn't sound right. And I looked at the bong and I saw this like slow hairline crack go down all the way to the beaker. And then the beaker just kind of popped and just water all over the counter. It was a slow motion disaster there with the bong.
Sounds like a Bugs Bunny cartoon. Like you
Yeah,
hear it slowly
yeah.
watching it break down.
I think the only worst one happened was a cousin of mine had an ash catcher and a bunch of additional fixings up on top of the bong to like further filter and just get deeper into the bongy goodness. It was sitting on the floor, and he went to pick it up, and the coffee table was closer than he expected, and he just sheared off like all the extra things, everything else except for the bong. So there's a lot a lot of fatalities. I was a bong only smoker for many, many years. But since then, I've really switched to rolling joints. Since I got involved with the Ganjier program, they talk a lot about how smoking a joint or a hand-rolled joint, you get the flower at different heat levels. So it's burning at the very end, but then you're getting actually some vaporized flower as well from pulling that heat through the joint. So they're saying that it's a very comprehensive or kind of all-inclusive way to experience that flower or to experience the product. And since then, hand rolling, once you master that, I think it just becomes part of the routine, man. It's like a little bit of origami, kind of get your mind straight, focus a little bit, and
Are you a
get it
vape?
going.
Do you vape by any chance? Because I had a chance to use the Da Vinci last year, and that almost changed my life too. I love that.
Yeah, the Puffco Peak Pro is really my go-to right now. It's a little dab rig that you can just drop a tiny dab in there and hit it at any temperature you want. It's just so easy to clean and quick to heat up. Before that, I had the whole butane torch going, Yeah.
Now, one thing I haven't gotten into is dabbing really. Like I'm CBD dabbed, and I've actually THC dabbed too. But when it comes to concentrate, I'd much rather take concentrate and roll it up in a joint.
Oh,
Like
like break it up.
much
Yeah.
rather like doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, it gets a little bit better, like a smoother experience. And I think like your approach there is like smoother as well. I mean, taking a dab is just like, you'll skyrocket right up if you're not ready for it, or if your tolerance is kind of low, you're about to get really quiet.
That's a good way to put that.
Yeah, man, I've seen dabs just silence folks, even the talkers in the group. There's something about getting a little too high in public that will bring it inward really quickly.
You definitely have some moments, man. Like I don't know if you ever watched Broad City, but I was rewatching Broad City a couple of days ago with my wife, and it
Yeah.
was the episode where I forgot her name, but she wanted to buy her own weed for the first time, and she had this whole freak out moment, and she was in the Kinko store, she knocked out the mannequin in there, and I've had a moment like that too. So I understand what you're talking about when you get too high. Sometimes I've had a moment like that, and I don't want to go back to that moment again.
Yeah, man. He's nothing you can do with those. You just got to find somewhere to retire and listen to some nice music for a
Oh
while.
no, no, don't you don't want to be violently high in public when no one else is high with you.
Yeah. Yep. You don't know what to do with your hands anymore, right?
No, exactly, exactly.
Am I standing okay? It's just
Does
start to
anybody notice
question.
I'm high?
Yeah. Yeah. Those once those questions start spinning, it's a spiral there.
hmm
Well, man, are there any other announcements for Cash Color Cannabis coming up? Any sweet guests in the pipeline or anything cool you're working on? I know you've got the Q3 issue around the corner, keeping you busy.
Yes, I can tell you a little bit about the Q3 issue because again, we are shooting the cover tonight. But the cover story is going to be it's about the NBA and how the NBA's new collective bargaining agreement now allows players to consume and
Awesome.
invest. And I've had a chance to speak to a couple of former NBA players and some people who currently cover basketball on the media side, and they've all given me their takes on how they feel about the process and what's going on. And I'm really interested in digging into that story because I really feel like, well, for one, from a consumption standpoint, I feel like it's been needed for a while. I mean, it's almost like I grew up playing basketball. I used to write for Slam magazine. I'm very much been around basketball for a while. I know y'all been smoking for a minute. Like it's almost like the secret that everybody knew. So I'm glad
Yeah,
we now
yeah.
we're able to consume. But I think the real game changer is the fact you can invest. Like you understand somebody who has $100 million who makes this annually, the little bit amount of money that a cannabis brand needs, especially a black or brown owned brand needs to really sustain itself, you could probably dwarf that. And I'm not even talking about like multi millions of dollars. You could really help create some generational wealth just by having some of these players be able to invest in some of these brands.
Yeah,
So
right.
that's the story we're tackling for Q3, and I think that's a
That's
very good
excellent.
story to get into right now. Like how some of these players, it should go past you just being a brand representative of somebody. You should really be looking at how you could honestly help shape this industry moving forward.
Yeah, man. And with those kind of investments, they really are. It's like the foundation of generational wealth, for
hmm
folks if they didn't have it before and then just getting a few hundred thousand,
Exactly.
and I say that like it's nothing, man, but I mean, that's a very hard investment to find. And if you're even on a decent contract with the NBA, I mean, that's a serious, you could consider that seriously without breaking the bank.
I really thought
It's
about it.
pretty
I
wild.
saw a player who plays for Indiana University, University of Indiana, excuse me. He's a bench warmer, but he has an NIL deal, and his NIL deal allowed him to be able to pay off his sister's student debts, and she's trying to be a lawyer, so he's able to pay off her student loans.
Wow.
And I
Yeah.
remember my wife telling me that story. She said, "Well, he just in that second created generational wealth. You took off a huge burden off somebody who's now still has the ability to continue to grow their life." And that's how I look at some of these players. $100,000 would help Cash Color Cannabis a lot. Not like I'm pitching myself. Would help Cash Color Cannabis a
Pitch
lot,
away,
but
man.
yeah, so many brands are in the same position. Like you really just need. It sounds like a lot. It sounds like a little at the same time. $100,000, $200,000. If you are able to give that to somebody, you literally have the ability to create the generational wealth we talk about when it comes to cannabis. So I think this is a great opportunity for players when it comes to consumption and their own and taking the control of their own health and what they want to do when it comes to their own bodies and what they want to put in their own bodies, but also how they want to spend their money.
Yeah, dude, that's a wonderful topic, man. I'm looking forward to reading that issue and seeing the perspectives on that front, as it's going to open so many conversations as other professional sports probably start looking
Exactly.
over the fence, start
Exactly.
trying to
Somewhere
learn the
Ricky
ways.
Williams is yelling at the NFLPA like, "Yo, what's up?"
Yeah, guys.
Calvin Johnson's over here too. Y'all can put some money in his hands too. Like there's players involved here. So yeah, I think it was a great topic to touch on, and I'm glad it's very timely. It came around the right time. It's gonna the NBA's new CBA is gonna kick in July 1st. So this is around the time we're dropping this issue. So it's all on the right time.
Definitely, man. Well, yeah, thank you so much for jumping on the show today, dude. Outside of going to cashcolorcannabis.com, where can our listeners find more about you, your projects, and the podcast?
Oh, please, man. If you want to listen to the podcast, just search Cash Color Cannabis Podcast, whether you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, or wherever you stream podcasts. I often Google myself. I don't want to be that guy, but occasionally I'll Google myself just to see where I can find stuff. But yeah, Google Cash Color Cannabis. All our platforms, everything that you can find us on will pop up there. If you want to learn more about myself, just follow me on Instagram or Twitter or any of our social media platforms at Cash Color Cannabis. I post regularly, and more times than not, I'm posting about myself and what we're doing for the podcast. So you really get a chance to watch how we bring the whole thing together. So please follow us. Please subscribe to the show. We have a mailing list that if you want to join our email list, so you can keep up to all of our events. Every time we're dropping a new issue of the magazine or podcast, you can do that through our Instagram page as well. Just go to the link in our bio and click that, and you'll be able to join our email list. And other than that, man, yeah, just primarily hit the subscribe button on the podcast and drop some comments for us. Help us hit those rankings.
Right. The all-important rankings, and hit atlantabisclothing.com too.
Oh, yeah. Also, how did I forget about that? Hit atlantabisclothing.com. We literally still have hoodies, T-shirts, everything going out. Matter of fact, we're even offering a special right now that's going to end on Friday. And that's if you subscribe to Cash Color Cannabis magazine, you'll actually get a free hoodie at the end of the year. So...
Okay. Hey, awesome, man. Yeah, dropping those incentives. I'll have to find some Atlantabis apparel over here on my side, dude.
I learned from Sports Illustrated, man. You gotta give people something in order for them to do something.
Good lesson. Thank you, dude.
No problem, Rob. Appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to the Apartment 113 podcast. For more information about the show and our range of services, visit apt113.com. We offer cannabis operations consulting, agile product management, and connoisseurship services. With over a decade of experience in the cannabis industry, Apartment 113 is here to help.